Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. As many of you have been following the show over the last few years, you've discovered that we've had many people come on the program to talk about the power of the mind and how we can harness to get our mind to actually serve us rather than us being servants of our mind. It can go anywhere from how do you move yourself from a position of being in poverty, for instance, to being able to amass wealth, what we can do to get into those mindsets between the conscious and subconscious mind. Also the power of the mind to heal in case you're sick or you're suffering from a disease, and you kind of use that power of the mind to think positive thoughts and see if you can transform that disease into health. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is someone who's going to talk about a wonderful technology, and we've actually had this guest on our program before, and she's going to talk with us about this wonderful technology simply titled Hemi-Sync. And our guest today is Patty Ray Avalon, and she is a residential facilitator at the world-renowned research organization called the Monroe Institute. She is also a former faculty member of the Barbara Brennan School of Healing and also holds a BFA and MFA from Indiana University. So basically, she's very intelligent, folks, so you want to tune in, you want to listen to this. And I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program, Patty Ray Avalon. And Patty, how are you doing today?
Hi, Daniel. I'm doing all right, thanks.
Good to hear you laughing in your voice there a little bit.
Oh, you're too complimentary. But I'll pay you back here. I just want to tell you that it's always a pleasure to be on Talk Show Radio and talking about relevant and breakthrough ideas. I find I get a lot of stimulation and, just new ideas when I talk to you. So thanks for having me with you.
You bet. Now, Hemi-Sync, let's talk about what this is. This is actually unique. I've used it myself, and basically for the listeners out there, you put in a CD and you just relax. But, boy, it's really interesting what happens during the cycle of when you actually experience what Hemi-Sync does.
Right, and it's very simple to use, as you've just explained. It's simply something that you listen to. It's a CD at this time, and you can put it on your CD player or your iPod even, or your computer. And the technology within Hemi-Sync is designed to do two different things. It's a sound process that helps your brain synchronize so that both the left and the right hemispheres become more active and that you can start to engage and control both hemispheres. As you know, we have a left and a right. And I can tell you a little bit more about those functions if you'd like to hear that, just as a sort of reminder for people of what those hemispheres do. The left brain, the left hemisphere, is kind of in charge of what's linear, sequential, logical. It's more in charge of the verbal skills in our lives. It's more reality-based. And the right brain is much more holistic. It's gifted with the random. It's more intuitive, nonverbal. It's also fantasy-oriented, which is really great for creativity. And so when we can have both of those hemispheres, access to both hemispheres, when we want it, we have much richer lives and basically more brain power. So that's the first thing that it does, and that's why it's called Hemi-Sync, because when you listen to these special signals, it synchronizes both hemispheres. The second thing that it does is that it helps our brains move into what we call beneficial brainwave states. And most brain researchers categorize our brainwave states into four major categories, actually 4 or 5 now, but beta, alpha, theta, and delta. So Hemi-Sync can help our minds move into these brainwave states and help us accomplish different things. So when you were talking earlier about the mind-body connection, essentially, that when our thoughts, what we're holding as our beliefs, our thoughts, are there long enough, they can actually affect how we feel and how our bodies operate. That's the new research that's being done on the body-mind connection. So Hemi-Sync has this great technology that allows us to use our brainwave states to benefit us. And along with verbal guidance and focused attention, we can start to pattern and create what we want to have happen in our bodies and in our lives. Actually, we've got a whole series coming out now on manifesting. You mentioned that in your setup, so I can tell you about that a little bit later, because that has to do with wellness, too.
Well, it does, because you want to know that you're able to go out there or be in here, wherever it is that you are, and move in the direction that you want to. And I think people, especially when they go out and they scour the bookstores and the libraries, and they pull out books on how to improve their lives, how to get what you want. They dig through these things. They may even do the exercises, and still they just can't seem to move to that place that they want to be. And I think it's probably because, and I'm not totally sure, but as you're reading, that can tend to be a linear sort of a thing, so you're not really using your whole brain in the process. Would that make sense? Or?
Yeah, I think that does. So when you have all of your brain capacity working for you, you have a lot more human potential that you're working with. So in the area of wellness, and Monroe Products is now the creator of Hemi-Sync. It was originally developed by a man named Robert Monroe back in the middle 50s. And Robert Monroe was a sound engineer he was actually in radio at that time, and he was interested in how to enhance learning during the sleep state. So he found this technology called a binaural beat technology, which means that essentially you're sending two different signals into each ear to create a third beat, which they call the binaural beat. And you really don't hear this, but that's the one that helps us move into these beneficial brainwave states, this binaural beat. And let's see, where was I going with that? Bob
talking about the mind-body connection and health and healing.
Right. And so when Bob was developing all this, he realized that there was so much that we as human beings could do if we could access our deeper levels of awareness. In fact, I just love a quote by Bob Monroe. He said that the greatest illusion is that mankind has limitations.
Right. Very important to know that.
Right. And so over the years, since the middle 50s, they have developed many, many different applications for Hemi-Sync. Some of those applications are improved memory, enhanced learning, better sleep, developing more self-confidence, stress management, pain management. We have like 250 titles or more in our catalog. So the wellness ones are the ones that I wanted to talk to you and your listeners about today because you have to start somewhere, right? So this is a good place to look. Yeah.
Now, I know that in Hemi-Sync that it helps to reduce stress, and as I've listened to the CDs, it's kind of interesting because generally it's in the evening as I'm laying in bed, and you're listening to them, and they put you in an interesting state. You're not really sure if you're asleep or awake. It's sort of like you're active, but then you're very you're just kind of rested. It's really interesting how it works.
And that was a particular mind state that Bob Monroe found that he called mind awake, body asleep. And it's a very interesting state to hold in your consciousness because, we wonder what happens when we're sleeping at night. And that's, as I said, he was an early sleep researcher, and he wanted to know how to enhance learning. So he found a way through the signaling in this Hemi-Sync process to help your brain stay awake while your body goes into a really deeply relaxed state. And you had mentioned stress just a minute ago, and what researchers now know is that stress, really long-term stress, is not good for us physically or mentally or emotionally. Stress certainly does have its place, and short-term stress can be very useful for us. But when we live in a stressed, long-term stress situation, it really wreaks havoc on our system. So Hemi-Sync itself, because it can, let me just say a couple more things about stress, that it's basically a complex mixture of emotional, physical, and behavioral responses, which result in a complex mixture of chemical responses in our brains and our bodies. And what they've found is that meditation and certain behavioral modifications are two ways that seem to help our long-term stress levels. So Hemi-Sync, one of the things that it really does in managing our stress is that it helps our bodies relax very deeply. And many of the exercises have a 10-point body relaxation process at the beginning of each exercise, and that combined with the positive suggestion to relax really makes a powerful combination for our bodies to really unwind and to listen and to hold that relaxed state. And it also quiets our minds. Many of us have this mind that just doesn't stop, particularly at night, at the end of the day, right? And it can just keep us awake. So Hemi-Sync can help us quiet our minds and give us an opportunity to move into what I call the stress-free zone in our heads, just long enough for us to, perhaps remember what it's like to be unstressed. We kind of repattern that. And I think that it also helps us move into different states of awareness so that maybe what was troubling us before or what was stressing us can be viewed from a different viewpoint or larger perspective, so we can even get some solutions to the problems that we've been living with. And that can help manage our stress a bit.
I was just thinking, too, Patty, that when you talk about how we think about certain things, it could be, for instance, you go to work and you can't stand your boss, or there's a coworker or somebody that just really gets your goat, and so you already have an attitude before you go to work. Then you work there all day long with this, man, I can't stand this person, what's going to happen next? If you pay attention to how your body reacts at the same time, you would realize that everything we're talking about here is totally true, that we think ourselves into stressful situations.
And that self-awareness piece about, the moment we start to feel stressed, we can become much more self-aware and create little biofeedback systems for ourselves so that when we start to feel our stress points, not that I'm a stress expert, please don't get me wrong there, but
yeah, but I think all of us are experts because we know what stress is and what it does.
Right, and we don't like it.
No, not at all. We know we don't like it, and that's a stressful thing, is that we don't like stress.
That's right. So, Einstein said, when you talked about going to work and finding that you're in a situation that's full of problems or problem people or relationships, that many of the problems that we're trying to solve can't be solved at the level from which they were created. So when we can take ourselves and our awareness to a different state of consciousness, from a different perspective, we might see how we can better that relationship, how we maybe can find some solutions to what the problems are at work. So that's another thing that's helpful.
Now, so I guess what I'm hearing you say is that through the use of Hemi-Sync, through, let's call it stress relief, is that it could take your mind to a level of being really fluid, of flowing, so then that way you can be more adaptable to situations where stress just doesn't exist, or if it does, you catch it at the moment that it's happening and you're able to let it go so it doesn't have the ability to hang on. Is that pretty much how it works?
That sounds right.
Okay. Because it's amazing when you can live that way, just being fluid, allowing things to flow and be as they are. You start actually enjoying life, I think, I would believe, a lot more because of the lack of stress, and therefore you're going to be a lot healthier because you're happier.
And it gives your body a chance to regenerate and repair itself when you can reach a state of balance, and you're not in swinging one end or the other with the hormones, the stress hormones. When you've reached that state of homeostasis, it's much healthier for us.
Now, and I was reading in your literature about Human Plus. What exactly is that?
Well, Human Plus is a category of CDs that Monroe Products sells, and it was developed once again by Bob Monroe. And it's Human Plus, meaning that Bob felt we had this great human potential, and he created these exercises that help you imprint into a deeper level of your awareness through something he called an access channel. So you could create any desired effect in your life by going into this relaxed state and giving yourself an instruction, a positive instruction for the future. And so later on, say in your everyday waking life, you could say this verbal cue and create the conditions that you were patterning for within yourself. So for an example, there's one called sensory seeing. And I'm now in my 50s, right, and my eyesight has taken a turn. And so I started using this exercise called sensory seeing, and there is a function command in there. And when you're listening to it, it tells you all these positive things about how your eyesight will get sharper and clearer, and you'll be more sensitive to light. Hello?
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry,
we kind of lost you there for a second.
I'm so sorry. So that what you can say later on, say during the day, if I'm walking around and my eyesight gets a little fuzzy, I can stop, take a breath, and say, plus, see, better. And all of those positive instructions that I gave myself during the exercise are there deep within me somewhere. And they come into that body-mind connection and hopefully start to change my eyesight for the better. And I have noticed that when I do this regularly, and that's the key for me, is that I do see some positive effects. Mm-hmm. So that's basically how Human Plus works. I also wanted to mention one other thing, if I may, about when we were talking about stress and relaxation. Those are just certain types of Hemi-Sync CDs, and we also have some that are extremely good for concentration. So these can help our minds move into a predominantly, say, beta brainwave state, which is really good for high focus, for concentration, for being very present. And so it's great for students or people who are trying to, say, do something with their business, right, a business activity where you really need to be focused and sharp. You can put this exercise on, and it's just signals, basically. There's no verbal guidance in this. These wonderful signals that help your mind become very focused and alert.
You know, it's always astounding to me what is available out there for people to be able to achieve whatever it is they want. As we were talking earlier about stress and how that affects the health of a person, especially the longer they hold on to it. And I also noticed that, along those lines, especially as people are approaching midlife and beyond, they'll tend to see the doctor a little more, and they may even be going because they've had a stroke or cancer, some disease, something like that, and that you actually have a support series to help people through those processes. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, we do. We have quite a few series. There's one very popular one called Surgical Support. And in this particular series, there are exercises that you can listen to before the operation, during the operation, and in the recovery stage. And there are some there for even the long-term recovery stage, and they're designed to help you relax and positively get through these experiences. The others that are in that type of series are support for stroke recovery. So the Hemi-Sync itself is very beneficial for, as I said, balancing our brains, right, both hemispheres. And so that in and of itself is helpful. But then there are these positive suggestions that you can listen to in those exercises that are helpful. And the Cancer Support series is really rather broad and helpful for people to support their cancer regimen, whatever it is that they're experiencing or in their recovery or their doctor's program. We have some exercises that can support them. There's one called Chemotherapy Companion, and it was developed by a doctor who has created a guided meditation so that when you're receiving your chemotherapy, you can frame it in a very positive way so that you can imagine it going into your body, really doing wonderful, helpful things for you, and visualizing that. Mm-hmm. There's one also called Radiation Companion and another for sleep. So those have been rather popular.
Have cute titles, too. It's my radiation buddy. Well, it's really important especially to bring something like that up because when someone becomes diagnosed, for instance, with, say, cancer, it's how they think about the whole thing that determines whether it gets worse or it gets better a lot of times. And I think more and more people are beginning to become aware of that now, and they realize the power of the mind to help them be able to heal the cancer. And in some cases, it was probably the mind that helped develop it in the first place. And if you can kind of switch that to the different direction, you can just see how powerful using the Hemi-Sync technology for something like that could really be for someone.
Mm-hmm. And, the surgical support series I was telling you about, actually, it was demonstrated in major hospitals and clinics to reduce anxiety and to stabilize blood pressure and also to minimize the need for anesthesia or pain medication. And there was a report in United Kingdom publication called Anesthesia that said average patients listening to Hemi-Sync required 4.5 times less analgesia than patients listening to blank CDs. So there was some clinical research done with this as well.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's an interesting book by a woman named Gary Carter called Healing Myself, and Gary's a fascinating woman. She had a cataclysmic car accident in 1982, which essentially destroyed much of her face, unfortunately, and she faced about the next 10 years in reconstructive surgeries, which gradually rebuilt her jaws and her cheekbone and her nose. But one of the most astounding parts of this story was that how she used Hemi-Sync to change her multiple-hour operations from dreaded ordeals into challenges that she met calmly and with reduced anesthesia.
It's just incredible what the range that Hemi-Sync has to offer for the human potential. It's incredible, actually. Each time that I talk with you, there's always something different that I didn't know about before. And what are some of the other areas that people might be interested in hearing about that Hemi-Sync that they have?
Okay. Well, I think particularly for the Beyond 50 group, which I am part of as well, so I can
maintaining wellness. Can't have prosperity if you're not feeling good.
Right. So these are things that I have used over the last 12 years, and I feel like they've been just really precious I call them my toolbox. We can think of them as products in a catalog, but I like to reframe that and call them tools for my future. I look at all of these as an investment in myself and my potential. So there's one that I've used for years called Retain, Recall, Release. And it teaches you a very easy method to improve your mental abilities. So you're given these verbal cues.
Telephone cues, verbal cues, any kind of cues. Sometimes it's a bird on a branch.
So sorry about that. Well, if you can bear with me, it'll stop in just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I was talking to you about
mental clarity, the cues that you use.
Thank you. Retain, recall, release.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And you can use it at any time when you want to embed things into your memory and when you want to recall them more easily. So when I was becoming a facilitator for the Monroe Institute, I had to learn tons and tons of technical information. And being an artist, a professional artist, I was primarily in my right brain. I was not a real left brain person. So I started using this CD, and I really found that I was able to remember and access tons more information that was very helpful. So that's a really good one. Another one that's just come out is called Do This Now. And it's designed to help people who have procrastination problems. Anybody out there?
That's certainly me. Oh, my goodness.
You
That's
too?
like my nemesis, for crying out loud. I think, some people go, how come you're not as successful as we think you would be? And I think that's one of my, when you recognize, I guess, call them your faults or your weaknesses, you want to work on those, but that also is part of your nature. Just don't let it get too bad. But procrastination and the ability to start and follow through to the end of a project, I watch my wife all the time, and I think, oh, my goodness, if I just had half of what she has, things would be very, very different for me, I think, in many ways. So you actually have something that sounds like something I've been looking for. So.
Well, we're going to have to get you one, Daniel, a copy of this thing. Basically,
no, because believe it or not, people who, and I almost sometimes think of procrastination as an illness or a disease because of what it keeps you from. And I'm sure many people who have it. They're very frustrated because they don't know how to change that or stick with changing that. And it really creates a lot of limitation.
Mm-hmm. You're right. And this is a very simple method to just move yourself through those stuck points. And sometimes it's right at the beginning where you have difficulty beginning something. Sometimes it's right in the middle or, right when you're at that completion part. There are sometimes those places within us that just really fear maybe the grandeur of something that's about to come through, that part of our greatness. So using this CD can help you be a lot more productive. Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad. I'm always glad when we have these conversations, because we have a lot of really interesting people who come on the program and the different aspects we talk about. Just recently, we were featuring a book. It was Killing the Sacred Cow. It's dispelling the 401k myth. And through this whole thing, when we were having the conversation earlier this week, we both came to the same conclusion that even though out there they're telling us how bad the economy is, that there is a lot more abundance out there than people can ever realize. And he says the one thing you need to really start doing more of is creating that creative capital in your mind, getting your mind, that's where your gold is. And if you get out there and you start doing that more often, you'll realize that this is all garbage that they're feeding us and that the economy is a lot greater. It's better than you think it is. And by engaging your creative mind and getting out there and serving people through doing that, that you'll be amazed that you'll realize that what we're talking about is true, that this is all hype and it just doesn't exist. And you even have a series on creativity. I know that we've used that as well, and we realize that it's funny when you start listening to people about all the economies, and they make up all these excuses. The economy's bad, all the government's out to screw us, Wall Street's out there to take advantage of us, and you're not buying into that anymore. You're like, no, it's not that bad at all. Actually, it's not bad at all. So it's quite amazing what these things can do.
I agree with you totally. That don't buy into it is my philosophy. That's my mantra now. Don't buy into it.
But the thing is, before you would. And then we were using Hemi-Sync, the creativity CDs, and you realize, no, it's about finding solutions, not buying into the problem.
And I think it starts with, us as individuals, that we have, everything starts with a creative idea, including everything that's happening, you call it good or bad out there. It started in someone's mind as an idea first. And I think the really big way we begin to bring change, it starts with ourselves, but it starts with how we are thinking about how we are looking at our lives in the world. And if we can approach it from the kind of reality we would like to see happen, that we'd like to create, that we start to find the ways to do that as well. It's not just dreamy, okay, I'm going to imagine it'll happen. That's maybe the first step. But then the second step is finding ways and problem solving and coming up with new solutions that will support us in new creations, new solutions.
Well, Patty Ray Avalon, it's been a pleasure to have you on again. Again, the technology is Hemi-Sync. I know you've got a wonderful catalog, and people can go online to your website, find out what you have. And folks, just getting these and using them, at the very minimum, you're going to relax and relieve stress, and that's a great starting point. But it's real subtle, but you begin to see and feel the effective changes that are beginning to happen out there, and it's really quite fascinating how this Hemi-Sync technology works. Tell people where they can go and find out more about Hemi-Sync.
Right. You can check the website for Monroe Products, which is www.hemi-sync.com, hemisync.com. And you can even see a lifetime brain map of how your brain can move into the synchronized state if you log on to the website. And it's really inspiring. So, Daniel, thank you very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking with you again. And I'm going to get you that CD. Do this now.
Well, thank you so much. It's always fun to have you on. And maybe next time we'll talk for the Beyond 50 crowd about the CDs that you have available for better sex drive. Ooh,
oh, yes.
They've got something like that?
Too.
Well, we'll save that for next time.
Okay.
Okay, again, Patty Ray Avalon of Hemi-Sync, thank you very much for sharing this with us on the program today.
Okay, Daniel. Take care.
You bet. So there you go, folks. We've got real live tools that you can use that are above and beyond books to help get into that mind and get both sides working together so you've got the whole mind. Because usually most people that succeed in any endeavor out there, that's generally what they're engaged in, is using the whole mind to be able to create the kind of life that they want. And Hemi-Sync is certainly a very enjoyable tool, a very easy tool to use. So visit the website at hemi-sync.com and find out more about the Hemi-Sync technology. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Be sure to visit our website at beyond50radio.com. That's the number 50 with a 50, and sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter. Again, thank you for joining us, and remember, live your day past halfway.